Welcome to Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow. My name is Mariana Cordier and I am your host. Lessons learned after the last 24 months in the pandemic is, what is our future going to look like? Is this our new reality? I have two extraordinary guests joining me to talk about this, talking about workforce, public relations, business. My first guest is Mitch Markowitz. He's the Vice President of Business Development at Family and Nursing Care. And my other guest is Nestor Alvarenga, who's the Senior Director of Public Affairs at the Communications Shop. So welcome, gentlemen. And, starting off with Mitch about workforce. I mean, what are some of the lessons learned, but really, what does the future look like?
Well, that's a great question, Mariana, and thank you for having me. And boy, I'll tell you, it's going to be hard to answer that question in just a half-hour show. I think the real honest answer from my perspective is we're still very much trying to figure out what the future looks like. Our company helps frail older adults. We send certified nursing assistants out into the community to help those folks who need a little bit of extra assistance with little things like bathing and dressing and meal preparation. So they want to stay safe at home. So we kind of divide our workforce into two categories. Those workers that are on the front lines, they're working every single day out in the field. And then we have our administrative staff, which is the folks who are typically in our office. And they are, prior to the pandemic, we were in the office Monday through Friday, but we're a 24-hour business. And what does that even look like anymore? So it's a loaded question, right? So for the administrative office staff, we were very fortunate that we were prepared, and we didn't even know it at the time, but we were prepared to have a pandemic. We were able to work remotely. In March of 2020, everything shut down and everybody went to their own houses. And thankfully, from a technology perspective, we were able to sustain ourselves without any real interruption. Now, the question is, what does the new normal look like? Is there ever going to be a day again where we're back in the office Monday through Friday? And I don't know that we know the answer. We're not there today, I'll tell you that much.
Let me ask you about that really quick. So I know the reluctance of employers before was, are my employees really going to do their job? Are they really going to work? Or, what is the response with employers that maybe didn't pivot as much as you guys did and was able to do everything remotely? What was the results of having the employees working from home that were the office staff?
So thankfully, we really, like I said, we were prepared and we were very efficient with our time. I know some of our friends in the industry they struggled a little bit. They didn't have the ability to transfer telephone calls, right? And everything that we do is based on our telephones. From a positive perspective, people didn't have to leave the house. They were able to just log on in the morning, work their day, work their night shift, whatever it was, and move on from there. I think what we're seeing today, though, is there are a lot of folks, myself included, that kind of got used to the idea of not having a commute to the office every morning. We didn't have to sit in traffic on the Beltway, and their technology has caught up, right? We're doing this whole TV program on Zoom. I'll never forget the first time that I was watching the news after the pandemic began, and they'd sent all their anchors and the weather people and the sports people at home, and I was watching the weather, and all of a sudden the weather person's cat just wandered out into the studio, right? So, and actually I have the same story. One of my colleagues has a cat that wanders in on some of our meetings on Zoom, and I'm like, this is just a different time.
Is it something sustainable? Can we sustain this?
It's a good question, because I do think you lose a little something, right? There's a culture that most companies have established, and it comes from being together. And we believe that we have a very, very strong culture. And I miss being around all my colleagues every single day. I miss being able to go into the kitchen for a cup of coffee and have that connection and say, look, we're working on the same team. We're working towards the same mission. And it's really hard to do that over Zoom. We're trying some new things. We have coffee talk meetings every week, but it's not the same. So I think there's a balance that we're trying to find, because the reality is a lot of employees don't want to go back to the office full time. Like I said, they like not having to sit in the car. So it's a journey. We don't have the answer yet.
And Nestor, you have some exciting news. Last time you were with us, you were, working somewhere else, and now you're at Communications Shop, and you did that jump in July. How was that? And in the middle of a pandemic, what is your advice about lessons learned in your industry?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation and the program. I and it's as we're having this conversation, and to me and I became part of this great resignation that is happening at the moment during the pandemic, right? And here we are, and it's been and for me also an incredible experience to be able to become a nomad, right? And be and connect from different places around the world that you could do that, or here nationally as well, right? If you know me, and my work has always been super local and community based always, and so I really had this summer as an experience to go out and to be able to do that remotely. It was an experience of my I'm a little bit late to the game on that. Other people would say, well, like Mitch, right? Well, we've been doing it for a year and a half. But when I was working at the station, we were also remote, right? And with the newsroom, everybody being remote, I think you miss and you have a little bit of those things that like that connection that folks can have from the living room and giving you the news. But there are other things as well, right? So there's both sides to both arguments. But I think that we're in this period where we didn't know we were going to be in this, right? And we're trying out things, and what's got that future going to look like, and the future workforce, and what does that mean? 3 days a week, right? A lot of friends and family where this is the conversation right now, right? I've been doing it for a year and a half. Why do I have to go back to the office? Well, it's been proven that I do the work and I do more at home, right? That's another argument that people say, right? I'm more productive. I'm doing more. So why now? Why have to go back? So I think it's super interesting where we are right now as we're having these conversations. And quite frankly, as Mitch just said, what is that going to look like? We don't know, right? That's still the trial, and is it going to be a mix? Just like this. Also on events, right, Mariana? I mean, this interview happening now, but also we've seen it throughout the summer and now fall, as we're getting into the winter, where we're going to have mixed events, right? People are comfortable doing it, and you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I don't want to be in person. Send me the link, and I'll join comfortably from my house, or the opposite. That people are like, you know what? I need that interaction. I need that human experience, and I want to be out there. But then again, it'll depend on the level, how comfortable you're feeling, and a very deep personal choice.
Well, it's interesting because as a business owner, one of the things that you think about are your overhead. And when you think of overhead, you're thinking about rent, you're thinking about the utilities where you have your location, and how that accessibility to your clients is. And so, if you can pivot to the point where you can get rid of a footprint, I imagine that has an impact on both sides. The business, having an opportunity to save money, but on the other side, what are all those landlords going to do? It's like a commercial property. I mean, what do you forecast or see as the future, Mitch?
Well, for us, our hope is that there's a balancing act that we can achieve. I think, we know, and I didn't have a chance to even talk about the other workforce, right? Our caregiving workforce. We've got to be there from an administrative perspective. We've got to be there to support them. And they will always need a place to go to come into the office, whether it's to pick up equipment or for training programs, some of which we're doing online now, which we never used to do before. But there will always need to be a hub for those folks who don't have the luxury of being able to work from home. I mean, our caregivers, the whole genesis of what they do is help people remain at home as safely as possible. So they have no choice but to go out, leave their house every day, and go out into the workforce. So it's a balancing act for them. And kind of to follow that point, the mass resignation, as Nestor, you were saying before, we've seen a lot of folks who have left our industry because they don't want to continue to do that for whatever the reason might be. And it's, for us, it's all about retention. It's all about making sure that our wages are competitive, and we're making sure that they're paying what they deserve. So there's a balancing act that we've got to find to be able to support them appropriately.
How has it been going with regard to retention?
So it's really interesting for us. When COVID first started, a lot of our caregivers chose to, to move away from the industry. A lot of that was because they were afraid of putting themselves at risk. If you think about where we were in the spring of 2020, where COVID was spreading rampant, we didn't have any PPE, we didn't have a testing program. There were a lot of people who said, you know what, I'm at risk myself, I've got family members, and they chose to either stay at home and not do much of anything or move into another industry. We're seeing now that we are in a different place. We have PPE, we've got a testing program that's very robust. The vast majority, actually about 98% of our caregivers are vaccinated. And we're pushing out the booster shots. So people are safe, they want to get back out there and resume their careers. So we're in a better place certainly than we were over the last 2 years. It's just figuring out, how do we stay ahead of that? What is the future going to look like beyond this first booster shot, right? Will there be future booster shots, and how do we make sure that we are educating appropriately to make sure that those caregivers are getting the attention they need and protecting themselves and their clients and their families?
And Mitch, is there, in your business plan, in your industry, an idea of, okay, we know COVID and we're dealing with COVID and we'll see what happens, but about any future possible pandemics and other types of, I don't know whether to call it COVID or SARS or whatever it may be?
Well, it's a great question. And I think to paraphrase from the president of our company, Jeff Zuckerman, he said the beginning of 2020, when COVID first hit, nobody had global pandemic on their bingo card for that year. And we didn't have, we didn't have a pandemic committee or anything like that, but we have a regular meeting of a handful of folks on our leadership team that's discussing exactly this. Right now, we're still primarily focused on COVID, obviously, but to your point, we don't know what's going to come. There is absolutely the potential that there will be another pandemic. So what does that mean? How do we prepare ourselves for that? And a lot more questions than answers at this point.
And Nestor, in your industry, what is this perspective about what the future may bring and being prepared for it that you guys consider?
I think that, one of the things, right, is what we have seen, and unfortunate, is the misinformation that's been happening at all levels, whether it's the Latino community, or immigrant community in general, right, but also specifically for Spanish speakers and the Spanish language media and misinformation on the digital world and all of that, and so how the impact, right, and I think that the attention is and the focus is there now. It's like, whoa, wow, what are we going to do, and how is this going to, again, to Mitch's point, this is a global pandemic, and there are lessons learned at all levels, at all industries, and at personal, obviously, and family and friends, that moving forward, we can't go back to there's a new normal that needs to happen. And those conversations, I think that we see it in the communications world, right? Where it's like, where are you getting the sources from, and how it's, validating that and all that information, the WhatsApp, right? That's another one that's huge platform in the Latino and immigrant community as they stay connected with folks back home and family members there, right? It's like, how do you know that it's a trusted source, and where is that information coming from? So that, I think, the pandemic has really opened our eyes to that, and the key messaging and where are we getting those messages from.
From a communications perspective, can you clarify for the audience kind of where it's thought that some of this misinformation is coming from, and what is its purpose, really? I mean, what are they trying to achieve?
Right. I don't think we have enough time to go into that, but the reality is, right, it's specifically that, it's especially that, it's like, wait a minute, what is happening? Where is this coming from? Or what source? As we got into this, and what, remember, right, when at the start it was political as well, just the very issue of the masks, right, and then the whole pandemic and then the vaccination, right? So I think that is precisely what's happening now, and it's just those filtering that need to be set in place to flag and say, this information, and this is an opinion, this is a fact. I think that's what we're seeing, and where hopefully we go for, and because at the end of the day, so many people have unfortunately, right, impacted, and we all have been impacted by this pandemic in one way or another.
So for the audience perspective, Nestor, how do you know what you're reading is misinformation and not truly facts? I mean, lots of people want that 5 minute, I want to say soundbite, but maybe it's not a soundbite, but a 5 second, blurb.
Exactly. I
And
go to the trusted sources, right? So the news outlets that I
well, but we're
know.
talking
And
about news
I,
outlets. What about Fox? Or, even CNN
I
and MSNBC do have their slants. So to be fair, so how I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
right. I mean, that it's coming to get away from the networks, right? But if I'm getting something that is coming from my local government, right? Specifically from the Department of Health and Human Services, right? So I know that will be a trusted source, or the federal government, or those sources, right? Or my local clinic, that I can say, gee, you know what? I can trust this source because my doctor, that's where I go for my checkups, at the clinic, at the Mary Centers of the world, La Clínicas del Pueblo, right? Those is what again, to move away from the big networks, but they also play a huge role. But it's those other sources. But if I'm getting a WhatsApp and I can't tell you how much I got this from folks, and we mistakenly assume sometimes, oh, it's because people don't know, and then they don't know how to differentiate. But it's from all levels, from people with a PhD, a CPA, that, or a high school or college education, but that are sharing and saying, look, listen to this. And I can tell you on a personal level, and someone who with a higher education was like, listen to this voicemail, this message on WhatsApp. And I'm like, how do you know? Where is that coming from? How do you know that that's doctora, if that it's even a real doctor or doctora, right? And it's so many layers, right? And it's a huge task, but I think that we're there, and we need to, because at the end of the day, it impacts everybody.
Well, and I think that there is I think sometimes an inadvertent support of information that backs maybe your thought or your belief about something, and because it backs you up, you think it's legit. Whereas if you did a little bit more research and maybe educated yourself on an issue a little bit better, you would understand that it may or may not be correct.
Yeah. I
Because
think that we all do it. Yeah, we all do that, right? With again, with my family, my parents. I'm like, okay, where is the doctora X? Where, where is her? Where is his information and all of that? Have you done research so just because it's out there in the internet of things, right, or on the digital and all the social media platforms, does not mean it's real. So I think that is again the conversations that we need to be having, and in a way you're informing, right? You're educating, informing, so you're not saying, oh, well, you need to go to this because this is only the trusted source. But just having those filters and opening up those filters, I think it's also again, I find myself doing it all the time. And I think with COVID, right, it's also as we continue, and we talked about this, right? We're still in this pandemic. I think that people, some of us are getting relaxed and saying, oh, the pandemic is over. I got my booster shot and it's good. And other folks are, I think we're seeing those two sides, right? As we're getting to the holiday season and Thanksgiving, and folks are saying, and I'm hearing it even from my family, right? And in general, well, no, I'm not comfortable with hosting, and I don't want to have people. If it's going to be a nice day, maybe we have something early and people can gather outside in the backyard. But having a lot of people over my house in a closed environment, are not comfortable with. So we're having those conversations.
So Mitch, what about in your industry of combating customers with misinformation, dealing with that, and your caregivers and all that? How does that work?
Well, boy, as Nestor said, it's complicated, right? what we've learned, we know that in our business we're constantly dealing with people who are in crisis. Historically, we work a lot with people who are being discharged from the hospital and don't know what they don't know, right? They're getting ready to go home. Mom needs extra help, and they're trying to put together a lot of different things. We're just one of those puzzle pieces. So they're operating in crisis, and they're not always thinking things through. So one of the things that we know is when you're in a crisis, the brain, and I'm not a psychologist, so I don't want to play one on TV, I suppose. But what we do is we make decisions emotionally, and then we look for the facts that support our beliefs, right? So a lot of times there are a lot of folks who are making those decisions really, really quickly. And Nestor, you probably could speak to this much better than I can. And then what we have to do is we have to slow the process down a little bit, right? And try to understand, why do you believe what you're saying you believe? And let's work with the information, the facts that we know we have, Nestor, to your point, taking from those appropriate sources, and then rebuild a certain perspective so we can help successfully. We see it every day, not only with families who are just overwhelmed, but also with our caregivers. And the very beginning, especially, there was a lot of misunderstandings about COVID, about how best to protect yourselves. Thankfully, we're in a much, much better position today than we were a year and a half ago.
So, Nestor, you said something that circles around about the holidays and the challenges about the holidays and people wanting to gather, but that's hard. It's really hard because we're not out of it. How have you noticed how fatigued is the public with the idea that they can't go back to normal yet? I mean, they want to, but they can't.
I think, from my observation, is people are making their own decisions. And we all are doing it, right? Nestor, I love what you're saying about your family gatherings. We're going through the exact same conversations about what we're going to be doing around the holidays. I can tell you that I bought a brand new fire pit this year. I also bought 2 propane fire pits as well. So we can have a pretty big crowd on my back patio. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that, because not everybody's comfortable going into a small crowded house. For our clients and our caregivers, we're offering suggestions that's very consistent with what the federal government has been offering. We're forwarding that information out, but everybody's making their own decisions. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We've got to find the comfort level for everybody.
Yeah.
And Nestor, with the Latino community, because we are known for getting together. That is our trademark. So what is the Latino community doing? How are they coping with this?
I know. I think we're no different, right? It's the conversations, as Mitch just mentioned, that we're all having, right? It's what are we going to do? How we're going to do it? How we're going to do it safe? Remember, our community also are those frontline workers, right? That are working at the groceries, that are working in the restaurant industry now as well, and at the airports and all of those everywhere, right? So I think that is the conversation. You're going to have folks, we have to, and I'm having those conversations with folks and saying, take all the precautions. You want to be safe, and especially during the holidays, right? I mean, who doesn't want to be with their, especially after this 2 years. There is that fatigue that you're mentioning, right? And it's but it's like we have to get through this, and we're almost there, hopefully. Again, we don't know, but it's let's remind folks that we're still in this, and we have to take care and continue to do those safety precautions, and having the hand sanitizer. That's one thing that we have always, right? And that's talking about what's going to change, and absolutely, things are gonna, I think we're going to see it in the restaurant industry. We're going to see it in the travel. Mariana, we were talking, keeping the masks on. I don't see that going away anytime soon. And so especially in it's no different with family gatherings. Some people are going to have the rules. I know some folks in the family that have the rules, and it's like, nope. And if you want to come in, need this, I need the mask, and I need the hand sanitizer next to it. So you got to clean your hands and all of that. Or people are doing spray, on their, to remove the cleaner, right? On their shoes. So we're seeing all these rituals, but the message is, let's continue to be safe and protect ourselves and our loved ones.
Well, particularly because in the nursing home area, I'm sure you have seen people who are vaccinated and they're still getting COVID. Is
Yeah,
that
there are-
right, Mitch?
There absolutely, there are breakthrough infections. Absolutely. The goal is to minimize risk as much as possible. So you add all these layers together, the vaccine and the booster now, right? So that's the first line of defense. And then you take the steps that follow that is make sure you still wear your mask. You still have PPE, whether it's gloves or a gown if it's appropriate, or masks. Face shields. We have a lot of folks that still wear face shields, right? Then, of course, you can socially distance, right? There's no reason to be sitting closer than 6 feet away from somebody if you can work with that distance. So there are all these layers, all these precautions that we can continue to take in addition to what Nestor was saying, the hand sanitizers, taking your shoes off when you come in, et cetera, et cetera. And we're encouraging everybody. We're trying to educate as much as possible. And at the end of the day, folks in their homes make their own decisions, but hopefully they're doing so with the appropriate information.
And Nestor, you want the public to remember that, what is it about what's up?
Where is it coming from, right?
Where is it coming from? I like that.
Where check the sources.
Right. Make sure you check your sources is the theme. But I would like to thank the audience for watching and my guests for being on the show. We have run out of time, as fascinating as this all has been. You can see us on our cable channel. You can see us on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm Mariana Cordier. See you next time.